everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a Irish potato and leek soup, some sourdough melts for lunch today. So let's start out with our potato and leek soup. We are going to put about a tablespoon or two in our Dutch oven. We're going to let that start to warm up. I'm going to have it over, I wouldn't say about a 7, so like a medium high heat. And then we're going to take one yellow onion and we're going to give it a small dice. So I'm going to chop off both sides, and then I'm going to do a nice slit through. We're going to just remove this whole outer skin. There we go. Throw this in the trash. And cut our onion in half. And then I'm going to make about 5 little slits and then some little more crossed. There we go. It doesn't have to be too small or too delicate because we will be putting this through a blender to make our potato and leek soup. So you don't have to worry about getting a super small mince on it. Okay, let's add our onions to our oil that is starting to warm up. And then we will add in some garlic. Now, you can use fresh if you like. I'm just going to be using some, prepackaged minced garlic. And we're going to add in about a teaspoon and a half, so about 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to reach in here, get it in there, a little bit more. There we go. And then I'm going to give it a nice stir in the oil so that it is coated and will saute up nicely. There we go. Okay. Our next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut up our leeks. But leeks are, if you've never worked with leeks before, they are a really dirty vegetable. So we're going to slice it up. And as you do it, you're going to see a bunch of dirt and sand come out. So then we have to go give it a really good wash. Even if they say pre-washed, by the time you get to the inner layers of the leek, it's still full of dirt and sand. And so I always chop it up and then I rinse it really well in the sink. And it's because these like little stems, they grow up. It's like a mixture of dirt and sand is in there, and there's a lot of it. And if you don't get it out, then you'll have dirt and sand in your soup, and that won't be good. But they are, and the top leaves are never that bad. It's when you get down to these stalks. Here, I can see if I can pull back and just show you. You see how you have all this dirt in here? And it just gets more and more the deeper in you get. And there's always just so much in it. I've never had a leek that was not full of dirt and sand. And so you just want to make sure you slice them up first, because even if you try to wash them before you slice them up, it still is full of dirt and sand. So the only way I have found to get that stuff out every time is to just slice it up and then really give it a nice rinse. And I guess for those of you who don't know what a leek is, it's kind of like a giant green onion. It's in the onion family. It has like an oniony flavor to it, but it's just kind of a bit more mild, I would say, and a bit more hearty. So we're going to go and we're going to give this a really nice wash in the sink because, as I said, leeks are very, very dirty. So we're going to turn this on. I'm going to give my cutting board a rinse because a lot of times you get a little bit of sand and dirt under there. And then you just have to really get in there, and you want to make sure you push these apart because even in between those, you're going to get some sand and grime. And trust me, you don't want to be at the bottom of your bowl and have a little bit of grit in there because you didn't wash it all the way through. So we're just going to push these rings all apart, and that way our leeks will be really clean because you want your potato and leek soup to shine and not because there's sand in it. There we go. And I'm just going to push these through, and we're really just going to wash it up nicely because, again, nobody wants dirt or sand in there, but leeks are really delicious. So don't think that, oh, I'm not going to use them. I said they add a wonderful flavor to this, but A lot of times I'll add leeks to my chicken noodle soup as well because they're just such a lovely vegetable. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to give it a really good shake. Get all this excess water out, and we can bring this over here. And now I'm going to give our onions a nice little stir. And I'm going to turn my heat down to about a 5 now that my Dutch oven has warmed up. And then our next thing is we are going to use some potatoes. So we're going to give our russet potatoes a peel. You'll want to use russet potato for this because it just works really well in a soup that you're going to be blending potatoes in. Like Yukon Golds, yellow potatoes, their potato is a bit more waxy, and so it doesn't lend itself to quite as nice of a blended up soup. Let's get these. So we're going to get there, and then we'll peel this off. And then you want to make sure you get all of your skins off because that will just lead to like a chunk in your soup. So we're going to peel these, making sure to get all of the skins off. This soup also goes, there's a French name for this soup. It's called vichyssoise, where you can eat it hot and then you can serve it cold. And when you serve it cold, it's a vichyssoise. So this soup is actually delicious, hot or cold. It's one of my mom's favorite soups that I make, especially like if in the summertime. It's one of those nice, lovely cold soups that you can have to kind of change things up, like gazpacho or a cucumber soup. But we're going to be serving it nice and hot today. And then I bet you my mom will eat hers cold because she loves it cold. There we go. So one more to peel up, and then we're just going to give this a nice, we're going to cube it in about, slightly smaller than 1-inch cubes. That way they get tender in time. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to cut our potatoes. I'm going to cut them into thirds first. And that way I don't have super huge chunks, and then we'll cut them up into little cubes. You want to try to make sure all of your potatoes are around the same size because any potato that doesn't get cooked all the way through because it's too big will be chunky in your soup. And you want to have a nice, creamed soup. So we're just kind of aiming for, potato chunks around this size. But the goal is try not to have any super huge chunks that are bigger than the majority of it because you want everything to cook up evenly. It's the same thing with mashed potatoes. You want your potato chunks to be about the same size because any potato that's undercooked will just turn out to be a big lump in your mashed potatoes. And I will tell you, a little bit of potato goes a long way in thickening up your soup because potatoes are rather starchy. I'm going to give our onions a nice stir. They're starting to caramelize up nicely. Let's cut this guy in half. There we go. We'll chop. Perfect. And then we've got 2 more left. So even though this is only 4 potatoes, this will still lead to a nice, pretty thick, vicious, or Irish, potato and leek soup. Or if you're going to serve it cold, a vichyssoise. But I love it hot because it's just a creamy potato soup that has some lovely onion notes to it, and it's so delicious. This guy's a little big. Okay, let's add our potatoes in here, and we're just going to brown them just a little bit before we add our broth to let them simmer. There we go. And kind of coat them with the caramelized onion mixture. We got another, always an escapee. Great. Make sure you got none sticking together. Beautiful. And then we're going to add in some garlic salt Now we don't need much to salt it up because we're going to be using some chicken broth, but just a little bit. I like to season the potatoes now so they kind of absorb some. So about a teaspoon of garlic salt. And then we're going to add about a teaspoon of black pepper.
You got a question about this spatula and being in the pan?
Yes, so this is a silicone spatula. So it is heat grade up to 550 degrees. So it can sit in my pot and it won't leach any chemicals. Silicone is a great utensil to use, especially with non-stick over hard plastics because it is heat proof. You can bake in silicone. And so I have so many spatulas that are silicone that are great for when I'm cooking, and it's not a problem if I leave my spoon in there. I got this guy forever ago at like Williams and Sonoma. I mean, probably over a decade ago. And I have a whole bunch of them and I love them. Okay, we've got our potatoes coated in the salt and pepper. And now we are going to add in our leeks. Beautiful. So one leek, as you can see, makes a whole bunch. This was a fairly large one, so if you were working with some smaller ones, you'd want to use 2 leeks, but this was a pretty big leek. And it's one thing at the store, when you buy them, you don't buy them per pound, you buy them per leek. So I'm always like, where's the biggest leek out there? Okay. And we do want to use some fresh thyme. So let me get this a nice stir up, and then we're going to toss in some fresh thyme, and we are going to put in some broth. So let me coat all of this. The leeks are really big now, but as they cook and get tender, they'll shrink down just a little bit, similar to how like spinach is. When you add spinach to a soup, it's really big and bulky in the beginning, but once it starts to wilt, it will flatten out. Okay. I've got those. Now we have some fresh thyme here. I find it's cheaper to just buy a plant at the grocery store than it is to like buy the little packages of thyme because you get way more for the same cost. And I always try to keep them alive and revive them, but sometimes they can only be picked up so much. I'm hoping that I can throw my other thyme plant over there in the garden once it warms up a little bit here, and kind of have it rebloom again, because thyme is such a lovely herb. So I'm just trying to pull off the leaves here and try to leave out the stems, although it's not a big deal if you get a couple stems in there because too like stiff. So here we go. And pull this guy. And beautiful. This fresh thyme is going to add such a lovely flavor to our stew. Okay, I think I'll save a little bit of this for garnish towards the end, but we want it to be able to flavor up. We are going to add in 4 cups of water, and then we'll add in a big heaping spoonful of chicken bouillon. There we go. I might add in a touch more because that was a fairly large leek, and I want enough to cover everything. So I might add just a cup more. There we go. So I have it up towards the top. Remember, we are going to be blending it, so it'll be a lovely thick soup. And I'm going to add in a big heaping spoonful of chicken bouillon. I like to use bouillon over broth because I feel like I can get a bit more flavor in my soup from the chicken bouillon by adding just a touch more. But it makes it, you know, just a little bit. And it's also doesn't take as much space up on my counter. Okay, now that we have almost all of our ingredients in over here, we're gonna start on our grilled cheese, and we're going to let this simmer for a little bit until it's nice and tender. Okay, So we are going to be using up the last of our sourdough bread. This was just our basic loaf, and this is our specialty loaf from the other day, which was Parmesan and oregano. Okay, let's see. I think I want to try to make 3 sandwiches out of this today, so I'm going to just have to be careful on my cuts. There we go. So I know I can get 2 out of this one, and there we go. Pretty good. That's about a good one. We'll save this guy for toast later. And this is our lovely Parmesan and oregano. Beautiful. So we've got that one, and here we go. So this one we're gonna make into sandwich. Perfect. Look at that. We've got 3 pretty much out of here. Okay. Now we are going to coat each side with a little bit of butter on one side of each bread. This is what we're gonna have skillet down for our melts. And this will go lovely with our soup, because I love to dip in soups like my grilled cheeses. It's like a big comfort thing for me. My husband loves to dip his grilled cheese in ketchup, and apparently a lot of people do that, and I always am like, oh, I guess that's like a different version of doing it like with tomato soup. But these grilled cheeses will go perfect for our Irish leek and potato soup. So we're gonna put one down here, and now we just gotta butter the sides on this one. And there we go. And I don't put butter on my skillet, because I find if you butter your skillet instead of your bread, first of all, your bread doesn't get that nice crunch well, and then the excess butter that isn't touching the bread burns because of the milk solids. Okay, let's start with we're gonna do, so for my daughter, I'm gonna do a Havarti and ham. My husband is gonna do a cheddar and ham, and I'm gonna do like a triple cheese with some bougie stuff on it. So for my ones who are doing the ham, I'm gonna put a little bit of Grey Poupon, or just essentially any kind of mustard that isn't like your bright yellow mustard, because it's just not quite the right flavor profile. So we're gonna have some of the, as my husband calls it, the bougie rich mustard, because I guess when we were kids, they always had, it was like caviar and dreams, and they would be holding up their like Grey Poupon. So we're gonna have a nice there. Perfect. I'm just gonna take a little extra off. And let's start out with some cheddar cheese on here. Now make sure when you make your cheeses that you don't overflow your thing, because it will melt over and burn on your skillet, and you don't want that. So we've got right there for his, and then mine's going to be the triple threat, so I'm going to use half of that one on there. And then my daughter, she's going to have some Havarti on hers. It's funny, everyone has, like, you know, in our family, they have opinions about what cheese can go on what sandwiches. And my oldest daughter, she is not a cheddar cheese person that much, unless it's a straight up grilled cheese. But if you're adding any type of meat to it, she is like, nope, it needs to be a white creamy cheese or a Swiss, which I personally think Swiss is the worst. Okay, now for these two, we're gonna add a little bit of ham. So just some deli ham. You could use some ham slices if you wanted. And the trick is you don't want to overpile your ham, because you want your meat or your grilled cheese and everything to cook up. And if you put too much meat, cold meat in the middle, your cheese won't melt. So we're just going to do a nice kind of thin layer across. There we go. And this one's for my husband, because He loves just a good old ham and cheddar, and I am not a big ham person, so I'm just gonna do straight up grilled cheese with different cheeses. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little bit of smoked Gouda on mine because it's good. Gouda is probably one of my favorite cheeses. So we'll have a slice of smoked Gouda, and then I put smoked cheddar on there, or did I? Yes. And I'm going to put a little bit of pesto on mine, and I'm trying to use up the last of my sun-dried tomatoes. So we're gonna have a little bit of pesto and sun-dried tomatoes on my bread as well. So I'm just gonna take a nice spoonful of pesto and I'm gonna spread it right on the bread. This will just give it a nice herby flavor. Beautiful. And for mine over here, I'm gonna give them each, cover my husband up with another layer of cheddar cheese. I always feel like one day a week, I'm always like, go through and use up the packs of cheese that have like 1 or 2 slices left to clear it out. And those are kind of like some of my favorite grilled cheeses because they are just a plain, you know, like simple but cheesiest. There we go. So we're gonna have our thirds. We had smoked cheddar followed by Gouda, smoked Gouda followed by a nice slice of cheddar, and then we're gonna use up this white cheddar. So I'm gonna put a little bit on my husband's. There we go. Okay, now let's put out our sun-dried tomato. You can just lay these on, or if you want to, you can always chop them up, but I just love them straight up. There we go. I know, I always sit there and I'm like, I have 2 sun-dried tomatoes. Who keeps 2? Perfect. I'm gonna go, and before we finish up, I'm just gonna give this a nice stir. We've got a lovely boil over our potato and leek soup. And we just want it to continue simmering, but I always just like to stir it and make sure nothing is stuck on the bottom so it burns. Because if something burns on the bottom of your soup, it just it ruins your whole soup. Okay, we're gonna do a layer here and finish up with the Havarti on this. So this will be ham and Havarti, and we're going to put our slice there, and then we've got a cheese on here for this one. And let me I always like to tuck it in there, have the cheese. There we go. That way it's like a binder.
The dude sent you some bracelets and says he likes Aldi cheese as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, they're actually great. It's cheap, but it's delicious. Aldi's, I had never tried it until a couple months ago, and I really like it. And it's like half the cost. You know, we feed between 7 and 9 mouths every day here. So anything that can cut down on my grocery bill is a huge win, because you could just imagine how much food you go through with 7 to 9 kids. It's like, or not kids, but mouths to feed. I have 5 kids, and then I do have, like kids' friends, and my nieces and nephews come over so we just are always feeding, and then I feed my parents as well. So it's just like anything to cut down. I feel like in the last couple of years, just grocery prices are insane. I mean, think about eggs. Everyone knows how expensive eggs are right now. It's like liquid gold. You crack it open and I'm like, I got a gold bar in each egg. That's what I feel like I have when I'm paying for them, if you can find them. Okay, while we are waiting for our soups to simmer and our grilled cheeses, I'm gonna flip my cutting board over and I'm gonna give my knife a good wash because we're gonna cut up our pineapple to have with lunch today. So, pineapple is one of those, love it, but I will not pay full price for somebody to cut it up in the store for me, because it is like, you buy a pineapple cut up, even like a medium container, you're spending $10 there, and you don't even get the whole fruit from one pineapple. I find it's not, they look scary to cut up, but they're really not. The trick is when you buy them, you gotta wait a couple of days until you don't see as much green. You see how we've got some golden and some brown? That's when you know that they're good and sweet to kind of cut open and use for things. If they're still really green and vibrant, I'm going to turn my soup down just a little.
2 comments. One is about eggs are getting so pricey. When she picked up her eggs, one was cracked, and usually she throws it away, but she was like, I better just use it.
Yes.
And then people want to know what type of pan that is because it has such a small lip.
Yes. Oh, this is a griddle, and it's from Hexclad. And I think it's the 12-inch griddle from Hexclad. So it's so nice because this is great for sliding under. I make pancakes on this, like crepes on it, or Swedish pancakes, which are kind of like a crepe. And then grilled cheeses. I love this pan. And I will say it's Hexclad, so it is a bit more expensive, but it is non-stick and it works great. I do have it in, I think, my store. You can look at there, but I absolutely love it. It's one of those things that I added on a whim when I was buying my Hexclad set, and they were you can add this pan for $100 more, and it's normally in the store like $150 or something like that. And I was like, am I gonna use it? Bought it, did, and I loved it. It's one of those things where I use it all the time. Okay, so we cut the top and the ends off of our pineapple, and that way it rests nice and smooth. And then I'm going through, and this is the core. So you just kind of put it there, and you're just gonna cut out the hard little middle, because that's not good for eating. If you do have a toddler at home, like one who is teething and stuff like that, I give my toddler these to chew on, and he absolutely loves them because they're sweet. Like, the pineapple thing, they have a little bit on it, but it's just great for them to gum with. Okay, so we've got our cores out, so then I just am going to cut each quarter in half, and then I'm going to take my knife along the side and peel off the skin. And it's really...
Some people say you can take the skin and use it for tea.
Yes, you can. This can add so many flavors with. If you wanted to do a marinade on like a pork loin, you could take these scraps and put your pork loin, and it will give it that nice pineapple. The acidity will help break down the fat in the pork. It is you can use these peels for so many different things. It's one of those things where I feel like a lot of times we waste more than we need to because we're not creative with how we're using things. But yes, you can definitely keep these, especially in the summer if you're doing a lot of meat smoking and stuff like that. That would be great for marinating those, getting that nice little tropical flavor to it.
Yeah, they can hear Loki snoring.
Oh, they can hear, yes. We have 2 Cavies, so King Charles Cavalier Spaniels, and they got short little snouts. And because they have short little snouts, they are the biggest snorers out there. Let's see if they're ready for their first flip. There we go. The first flip is for melting the butter and heating up the bread to start the melting process of our grilled cheeses, because you want to slowly cook it through. If you heat it too high and crisp it up, your insides won't be melty and gooey, which you want, and your outside will be burnt. So I always say go slow with your grilled cheeses. Cut this down and just along the outer edge. And then sometimes you get a little nodule here, and those are just really easy to cut out. They don't bother me when I eat them, but I will say if you do leave a little brown spot on it, that piece of pineapple will turn browner faster than the rest. And it's simply because the sugar oxidization process has already started. It's like when you cut open an apple and it turns brown in a little bit. That's the oxidization with the sugar occurring. So I always just cut those out so that my pineapple stays prettier. It doesn't impact the flavor, but just kind of the look. And you know how kids are. If something looks off, they won't even try it. Okay, so we're gonna give one more here. There we go. But you see how quickly you can cut up a pineapple on your own, and it will literally save you triple the cost almost, because this pineapple cost me like $2.97, and I just sat it on my counter for a couple of days until it was ripe, and then we chop it up, and boom. If I were to buy this in the store right now in the fruit section, it would be easily $10. So there's our pineapple cut up. Loki, you gotta go wake up. Everyone can hear you snore. Yeah. Give my hands a quick wash. Okay. And since we're done cutting up my pineapple, I'm going to switch back over to my savory side and wash my knife real quick. There we go. Let's see if they're ready to flip over. That one's got a nice melt. Perfect. Okay. And I do find everybody's like stove and oven works differently. I find my part of my stove cooks a little hotter over here, so I always rotate. It's kind of like in your oven, your back always cooks a little hotter, so you know, you typically rotate through. When you're in your kitchen, you start to get your feels. It's like this oven, I don't use as much as my other oven because this oven does not cook as fast, does not stay as hot and work as well as my more expensive wall unit. And so whenever I cook something in here and I'm like, well, I cooked it for the time I normally do, but this one always takes like 10 to 15 minutes more than my other one. You know, it's funny how, you know, each one will just, like, it's got its own little quirks to it. Okay, let's get those simmering. Let's prep up our kind of our garnishes inside. For the potato and leek soup, we will be adding some cream towards the end, but you don't do it until the end, otherwise you're gonna curdle it. So let's let those simmer. We've got our grilled cheese, and let's prep kind of our garnishes for the top of our soups. And I'm using green onions. You could use chives as well. So I'm gonna use these top tender parts for our garnish, and then I'm gonna throw my bottom parts in the soup. They'll be nice and lovely. So here's what we're gonna use to garnish the top of them. You wanna use the top part, which is more tender for garnish, because the bottom parts are a little chewier and they have more of an onion kick.
You have a question? What's in the soup?
This is a potato and leek soup. So it's pretty simple. It has 1 yellow onion diced up, 4 russet potatoes, 1 huge leek, or you could use 2, some chicken broth, fresh thyme, pepper and salt. And we just, you just cook it and slow cook it, and then we're gonna blend it in just a second. Once these potatoes are nice and soft, they're almost there, is when we'll start to blend and to make it nice and creamy, and then it's done. Okay, let's take a couple bit more of our thyme, fresh thyme, and we're just gonna pull off some of the leaves here because we'll add a nice little burst of happiness at the end. It's just, I love fresh herbs. They do give like a lovely flavor. So we'll add those on. I'm not a big fan of garnishes that don't add a flavor profile to your food. So don't put like a big sprig of, parsley or something like that on a steak. I was like, you're not gonna eat the parsley with the steak. Now put it in an herb butter. That's another thing. There we go. So let's get some of this fresh thyme up. And in their soup, I used fresh thyme, but you guys could always use dried thyme if you wanted. You just need a little bit less. Dried thyme packs a bit more of a punch than fresh thyme does. So you would use, a little bit less in there. You'd probably use just a teaspoon in here.
And you got a question about posting the recipe?
Yes, I'll get on to making a recipe card for this. We also always post our videos so that you guys could always go back and reference them. That one needs a little longer. Okay. It typically takes us a couple hours to get everything posted up simply because, you got to download, and we've got kids that are going, things to do. Tonight we are going to be going to a baseball game. So we're taking, pray with us because we're going to be taking all 5 kids, including our littlest, who is, he's about 15 months now, 15, 16 months, and he is by far my naughtiest of my kids. You know, I felt like my number 4 was this like sweet little angel, and was like, oh, we should really have another one because he is so perfect sweet. And then this Mr. Jack is just, whew, he is so naughty. He's like the kid that looks at you when you're not supposed to, and he knows he's not supposed to do it, and he smiles as he does what he's not supposed to do. So he's a little stinker. So hopefully he'll be good at the game tonight. You know, if not, we'll be walking the aisles and walking the little like area around at the baseball field.
Concourse.
There we go. See, I'm not a true baseball fan. And then we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of bacon. We had bacon for brunch the other day, and I always save it because bacon is a great garnish. And I was deciding whether I wanted to do a BLT melt or use it as a garnish, and we're gonna use it as a garnish at the top because potato and leek soup doesn't have any like main protein source in it. So this is always a great little savory bite because who doesn't love bacon? Bacon, 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 bacon. Okay, let's check how these are melting up. Almost. Beautiful. Okay, I do have them low and slow because I'm trying to time everything to be done at just the right time. Okay, these potatoes are perfect. I can poke my spoon right through them. So we are just about done. I'm gonna turn my heat down to super low. We're gonna add a bit of cream in here, and then we're gonna blend, and then our soup will be just about done. So you want about a half a cup. So I'm gonna just start with eyeballing it, and then we're gonna blend it in. I add my cream at the very end so it doesn't curdle. Okay, let's ladle it out, and then we're gonna blend it and pour it back in here. Now you could use an immersion blender if you have. I had an immersion blender at one point, but I broke it.
You have a question? For leeks, is that the veggie that looks like a giant green onion?
Yes, it does. And it is in the same family, and it tastes similar to a green onion, a bit more mild and a bit more meaty in the onion flavor, things. Pour a little bit out. And it's lovely. And you just have to give them a good wash. That's the only problem with leeks. So let's give this a quick blend. And beautiful. And this is just the lovely color of this soup. It has just such a lovely green color. Now there are some people who will add in a half a cup of peas because they want an even brighter green color. But for me, I just like the potatoes and the leeks themselves. I don't want anything, extra in it. I want it to shine for itself. Let's see. I hear them sizzling, and I think we're getting to, just about. Beautiful. So I've got it low and slow. Now you could throw this in a big blender if you wanted to, or a food processor, all of it works. I have my little ninja over here, and he works. You just gotta make sure you put your lid on tight. And then there are, I guess, 2 thoughts of how you like your soup nice and creamy. You can either blend all of it and have a super creamy soup, or you can blend half of it and have a bit of chunk in it. And that's really just like a personal preference. I like it a little chunky, but I also know people who just love it super silky and, velvety. So we're gonna fish out some of the last bit of here, and then we'll be ready to plate. Beautiful. This is one of those soups, and the nice thing about this is this soup can be served cold, which is, interesting because most people don't think about a soup that can be served cold, but it's completely different. It hits you differently when you eat it cold, and it's also just quite lovely. It's a lot of times what they'll eat, like you'll make it for dinner in the summer, and then you can eat it the next day cold for lunch. Okay, we'll blend this last one up because we're gonna make it the way I like it, which is just with a little bit of chunk. Because I like just a little texture to my food. Beautiful. And you can see how it just thickens up so nicely. The potatoes just thicken it up just great. Sometimes it gets a little slippery here, and I'm just, we're gonna see if we can get this open. I might have to let it sit for a second. But, my husband always laughs at me because I can never open anything. I really can't open this. Okay, well, we'll try one more time, and then if not, I'll have to wait until we're done and he can pour it back in there. It won't change the effect of our soup. We'll let it sit for a second. We'll start plating, and then I'll see if it works. Look at these beautiful golden crusts on ours. You can see the cheese is melting. So let's get our plate out, and then I'm gonna see if I can open that one more time, and we'll add it to our lunch plate. What happens is sometimes when you're heating up something hot in here, the heat will seal it for a hot second, and then it's just impossible to open. Let me try one more time. Problem is one hand is slipping while the other one is not. I can't do it. Okay, well, I'll have to have my husband do it, but it doesn't matter. It's just would add a bit more creaminess, but we'll have it to it later. But let's serve up. Let me put, this one's gonna be my lovely grilled cheese. And we're gonna serve it up with a lovely dollop of soup. So this is our leek and potato soup. It has a nice creamy broth that's made from, you know, cream and the potatoes. And spilled a little. And then we're gonna garnish it with a little bit of green onions, a little bit of fresh thyme, and a few little sprinkles of bacon. And then we'll serve it with our pineapple. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, assuming you can open up your blender. Well guys, thank you for joining us here today. We try to do live cooking every day, kind of show you what we're eating as our family. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's always crazy and adventure. There's always something, you know, that happens in the kitchen. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.